Are we? Ooh. Welcome, everybody. Ooh, I woke half of you up. I'm Daryl Chan. I'm a resident here at Atherton, and I'm your town hall chairperson. So I'm glad you all are here. It's just great to see the smiling faces from this point of view. It's great. Tonight, as usual, we celebrate a number of birthdays, and hopefully some of them are here in the second week of May. We have Sue Holt. Oh, if you haven't seen Sue Holt play table tennis, you got to watch Sue Holt play table tennis. Yes. May Yamahata, Hattie Chen, I didn't see Hattie walk in, Colin Lai, and Pauline Yen. No? Well, we celebrate birthdays because, well, let's face it, without them, you wouldn't be here. So we have a couple of new residents that we'd like to introduce, and Jackie Bertios will introduce Cho and Margaret Wu. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Cho and Margaret moved to Atherton in February of 2023. They were in Atherton's wait list for 8 years, but they were called twice, but they were not ready. Actually, Margaret knew about Atherton over 30 years prior. When her kids were little, she used to take them to the daycare across the street, the First Baptist daycare, and actually Raylene is one of their teachers. And Margaret used to bring the kids over to Atherton to do caroling. And she thought to herself, one day when I'm eligible, I would want to move here. So now that they're eligible, they've moved in. Yeah. So anyway, Cho's name in Chinese means philosophy, and Margaret was named probably after a flower, just like her three sisters, Maple, Daisy, and Rose. Cho is from Taiwan, and Margaret is from Hong Kong, but they met in school at Oregon State. They have lived in the USA since the 1970s, and they moved to California in 1976. They lived in Pasadena, in South Pasadena, for 46 years before moving to Atherton. They have one daughter and one son. And Cho used to work in accounting and finance before retiring, and Margaret was a pharmacist before retiring. Cho loves to read and do gardening, and Margaret loves the movies, walking, and listening to music. But they both love Atherton because of its very friendly residents, and they like that they don't have to do maintenance in their homes. So please welcome Margaret and Cho Wu.
Thank you, Jackie. We also have something kind of new here at Atherton today. We have a new resident representative to the Atherton Trustee Board. And that representative is our own June Sakaguchi. Thank you, June. So So if you have any issues and things that you would like to present to the board, you can, if you see her around, you can chat it up with her and she could bring it to the board. Oh, there's one thing too. I think June also, she's so thoughtful. She said, if you have suggestions or donations, you can put it in this box right here. If you have any complaints, you can put them in this box right here. June, you think of everything, June. You're just wonderful, wonderful. Okay. For tonight, we have a wonderful presenter who comes all the way from Colorado through Central California. He is, of course, none other than our illustrious mayor of Atherton, the Honorable Craig Staton. Did I hesitate when I said honorable?
The mayor, huh? That works. Yeah. Thank you, Daryl. So, well, good evening and welcome, everyone. Glad you're here. June, very thoughtful. Appreciate it. By the way, Daryl, could we just pass that in Baptist tradition around so that everybody has a chance to give a donation right now? That's just, let's be good Baptists tonight. All right, well, I'm happy to be with you tonight and share. So one of the things that I realized is at the end of the year, at the end of 2022, after the last meeting, I didn't give a report. Somehow the timing and everything didn't work for me to come and share with you about the end of the year finances and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of making up tonight for about 6 months of that. And just to let you know, we've been fine all the way through. Okay, so I wasn't trying to hide anything from you. It was just the timing of all that. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the board retreat that we did this past weekend. Give you an idea of financially how Atherton is doing. Tell you a few things about the community you may or may not know about, and also tell you a little bit about plans, about things that we're working on around the community. I want to answer any questions that you have, and if I don't get them all answered tonight, you're more than welcome to give me a call or invite me to come over for tea or coffee or anything like that, and I'd be happy to sit down and talk with you about things that you might be concerned about. So just let me show you a few things. First of all, so last time that I spoke with you, I talked about the history of Atherton, and I talked about Hannah Atherton Baldwin. And I got the question that I get every single time that I say the founder of Atherton Baptist Homes and is Hannah Atherton Baldwin. And somebody asked me, is she related to Lucky Baldwin? And the answer is, I do not believe so. Lucky Baldwin came to the San Gabriel Valley about 50 years before Hannah and her husband did. But that question, the last time I got it, and then another person asked me, said, well, was she related to a Baldwin that is in Hawaii and had a plantation in Hawaii? And I said, I don't think so. And that triggered me to go on a journey to find out more about Hannah. There's a book, and I showed you the book that was written about the history of Atherton. It's kind of the definitive history of Atherton. And at that particular time, the gentleman by the name of Art Hyde did a lot of work to try and understand who Hannah was. But he didn't have some of the resources that we have today because it was pre-internet. And that question made me decide to go on to Ancestry.com. And I actually paid for a subscription so that I could do some research on Hannah. And I found out a lot of interesting things. So I wanted to share a couple. Number one, this is a picture of Hannah. Hannah Aurelia Atherton Baldwin. She was born September 23rd, 1831. We knew that. She was born in Weatherfield, Vermont. We knew she was from Vermont, did not know it was Weatherfield. Her father was Joseph, was 37, and her mother was Olive. She was 33. Olive was one of 14 children. I can't keep it on. I couldn't get it on the whole way. But her mother was one of 14 children. Hannah actually had 2 sisters and a brother. So that's a little piece of information there. She married Osgood McFarland Baldwin in February 29, 1852 in Morgan, Illinois. We did not know that her husband was named Osgood McFarland Baldwin. And they had 1 child during their marriage, Lily Anna Baldwin, and she died when she was 1.5 years old. And we did not know that. And I believe that what she did was that the child was born, and she went back to Vermont to visit family, and Lily died back in Vermont because she's buried in Vermont. So just to make you aware of that. Hannah and Osgood moved to Los Angeles in 1890, which is about 40 to 50 years after Lucky Baldwin had been here. And she died on July 14th, 1925 in Los Angeles at the age of 93. And she's actually buried here in Los Angeles, she and Osgood. So the other piece that was really fascinating is that Hannah and Osgood were well known in Los Angeles during that time. And there are several articles that are written about both of them in the Los Angeles Times about their life. And they donated, so there's a church called Atherton Baptist Church, still exists today in Los Angeles. And Atherton Baptist Church is named for Hannah Atherton Baldwin because they gave the gift that built the church. So they not only built a retirement home, they built a church. And July 17, 1925, this is in the Los Angeles Times, and here's the obituary for Hannah Baldwin. Reads like this: "Friend of Lincoln is laid away. Funeral of Mrs. Baldwin, philanthropist, conducted at her home. Funeral services for Mrs. Hannah A. Baldwin, philanthropist and one-time neighbor and personal friend of Abraham Lincoln, were conducted yesterday at the home afternoon at Pierce Brothers Chapel." Mrs. Baldwin was 94 years of age. She was widely known in Southern California because of her generosity in contributing to educational and missionary enterprises. In the last 30 years, Mrs. Baldwin is said to have given over $150,000 to charity. Now, if $50,000 at that particular time, I did this before, was almost $1 million that helped build Atherton Baptist homes, $150,000 would be basically giving away $3 million. She has been a member of the Memorial Baptist Church since 1890. She purchased the site for the church and gave it to the congregation. Mrs. Baldwin gave the ground and the building for the Atherton Villa, a home in Burbank for retired ministers and missionaries. When Mrs. Baldwin was first married, she lived close to Lincoln's home in Springfield, Illinois. She loved to tell of pleasant chats she had with the martyred president. And she also recalled the time that the absent-mindedness of Lincoln, who one Sunday morning, when in his bare feet he chased his son Tad. The child ran past the church, and Lincoln arrived hatless and shoeless, just in time to greet the congregation as they emerge from the Sunday morning sermon. So you don't think of Abraham Lincoln quite in that way, do you? So Mrs. Baldwin came to Los Angeles 35 years ago with her husband, Osgood McFarland Baldwin, who made a fortune in the real estate business. He died in 1917. And so that's a little bit more about Hannah, a little bit about her and her husband. I have Osgood's obituary, and I'll read that sometime to you. There's all sorts of abstracts in the Los Angeles Times during that time of different properties they bought. I have one that says Osgood McFarland bought 15 lots. And at that particular time, there was a lot of open land in Los Angeles, and there were a lot of people that were developing that. That's mine. You turn down mine.
Real bright in there.
It's real bright?
Yeah.
Okay. You want me to talk lower? Would that help? Okay. So anyway, so that just tells you a little bit about who they were and their spirit and their generosity. I have no idea why they were married in Vermont. I have no idea how they got to Illinois. There is one small piece that says that he was a postmaster in Illinois at a town called Panna. And that's not really close to Springfield, so I don't quite get this, but I don't know how they moved from Vermont to Illinois. And I don't know, though it appears that when they retired, they moved to California, and I don't have any idea why they moved to California. And I'm hoping to make those connections in some kind of way. But all the other stuff about what we've learned about her is all in the biographies. It's all the obituaries. It also talks a little bit about that. She spoke at the dedication, at the laying of the cornerstone for Atherton Villa in Burbank, and she was quite eloquent in the words that she said. So it was really fun, nice, and so interesting kinds of things. So just thought I'd tell you a little bit about that. So second, just to kind of let you know, want to welcome June. We're glad to have her on the board. I hope she enjoyed the retreat. I hope we didn't wear her out too much, but we're glad to have her. And she learned a little bit more about all the different things that we're working on. I'll give you some of that information. Not going to give you the whole boatload. Remember, we were there for about three-hour sessions, and I'd rather not do that tonight. So I always start by saying the Atherton's mission, values, and vision. The mission of Atherton is to be a senior living community rooted in Christian values, enriching lives and honoring all. Our vision is to continue Hannah's vision of honoring those who have served in Christian ministry. And the values, the Christian values that we hold up again and again are faith, kindness, gratitude, and joy. There are many other Christian values, but we chose these four, and we hope that the staff and the residents of Atherton all reflect faith, kindness, gratitude, and joy. We're working hard to try and see if we can make that happen. So, Atherton. So I will say, not only at the end of 2022, but here after the first quarter of 2023, Atherton is healthy. I say our financials are solid through the first quarter. Revenues match budget projections, and expenses are lower than budgeted. That's always good. So at the end of the first quarter, we have more money in the bank than we did when we started. We didn't outspend our revenues. That's a good place to be. Secondly, occupancy is solid and on budget. All areas of occupancy are meeting budget projections. The reason I say that like that is that if units are filled and people are paying for services, then we're able to keep everything going. So occupancy drives revenue. Simple things. If you were in the business of selling widgets, the number of widgets you sold would tell you whether you were meeting budget and all that stuff. In this case, the number of units that are occupied, and you'll see that, has matched what we projected it would be. And because of that, we're meeting revenues and can cover all of our expenses. Third thing, The emergency orders for the COVID pandemic have ended. Most restrictions have ended. Most activities around campus are returning to pre-pandemic levels. Interestingly enough, we had a person this past week in skilled nursing that tested positive for COVID when they went out to the hospital. When they were here, they didn't test positive, but when they got to the hospital, they tested positive. That triggered a whole range of things for us to do in skilled nursing because they don't want to see more people get COVID. So as a result of that, we're now on biweekly testing. We'll do that for the next 2 months, next 2 weeks. If all of them are negative, then we're off of that again. We don't have residents isolated, but those that are in Fox 2, where the person was that tested positive, they cannot do communal dining. They are doing activities. Many of them are wearing masks, different things like that. They just can't do communal dining. In Fox 1 and in Jocelyn, that's okay. We're doing that. We're continuing there. It does not restrict visitors. Visitors can still come and go, but you still have to wear a mask and follow the protocols to doing that. The resident, again, is not there. The resident went out to the hospital. That's where they tested. So the resident's not there, and there's no evidence that somebody else has COVID at this point, signs and symptoms, but we're taking precautions. Number 4, a couple of the projects that we're working on are finished and several others are planned, and we're working towards that, and I'll give you a little bit more information about that. And finally, on personnel, I'm happy to say that Joelle Medina, who has been our administrator in training for skilled nursing, to take Mary Monnier, thank you, my French is poor, has passed 1 test out of 2. She's taken both tests and she's on her way, and we're hoping that she passed both tests. It's just taken us a while to get results, and then she will become the administrator of skilled nursing. So we're very happy about that. That's a big step for us to make that transition, and we're glad that it's working out so well. So as a whole, Atherton's doing fine. So let me show you the financials real quick. So up here, you can kind of see up on this column, this is at the end of the first quarter. This is what we budgeted, and this is where we were last year. And as you can see, it's about $6 million a quarter. Atherton it's about $24 million a year in revenue. It's actually over that. It's about 25, but we take in about $6 million. We budgeted at 6.1, and we took in 6.2, almost 6.3 to do that, which is ahead of where we need to be. That's good. On expenses, we spend about 5.5. That's where we budgeted at, $5.5 million, and we only spent $5.3 million. And so as a result of that, our operating income was almost $1 million better than what we had projected. We had thought that we'd have about this amount, about $630,000. We ended up about $900,000. Then you take depreciation and amortization out of that. And you also have to deal with the stock market, some realized gains on investments. And unfortunately, those investments didn't have realized gains for the first quarter. That's okay. We ended up being okay. We add back in all the unrealized gains. That means that the stocks that went up that we didn't sell. Okay. So our stocks did pretty well. So as a result of that, at the end of the quarter, we were about $1 million to the plus. And we had budgeted to be about $8,000. So we were ahead. Last year, we were behind because last year in the first quarter, stocks went down. Now, if you have stocks, if you follow that and you didn't sell yours at the end of 2021, you were still holding on to them, they went down, just like our portfolio. But they kind of made them back, and we're back where we were, and so we're in a healthy place. So that's a really good thing. We're solid financially, and you'll see some other things that'll show you what all of that means in just a second. These are how the revenues come in. So Atherton gets about half of its revenues from what we call residential living services, which is independent living and assisted living and all of those parts. That's about 3.1 million here, which is just under 0.2% under what we budgeted. Okay, not much under, but just under. And then we get about half of our the other half of our revenues from skilled nursing. And that was under by $61,000. This one is a little bit interesting. So when we budgeted for last year in one category called Medi-Cal, we received money from the state of California. And every year they give us a projection of how much money they're going to give us on a yearly basis, okay? And so when Jackie did her budget, she said, the state says they're going to give us this amount of money, so she budgeted based upon that. Here's the problem. The state hasn't given us the money yet. They're still giving us the money like they were in 2022. Now we're assuming that the state is going to be kind and honor its promise and give us the money at some point. And if they do that, that $61,000 will go away. But until then, what we budgeted and what we received are not the same. And that's why that's up there like that. When the money comes in, hopefully by the end of the second quarter, that number will correct itself and we'll be in good shape. Investments were investment earnings. The dividends that we paid were very positive. So we were very thankful for that. We had some other revenues from rentals and doing some catering and different things like that that were under what we projected. And then we have some money that we released from donors based upon when projects come into play. And we released actually a little bit less than what we thought we were going to release, but we still ended up better than what we had projected for the first quarter. And that's why that number is positive there. Okay. In terms of expenditures, just two big blocks, salary and benefits. So we were under 161,000 under what we thought we were going to spend on that category. And in all other operations, we were under by a little bit, about 85,000, which means that our total was under by about $240,000 what we thought we were supposed to spend. How did we do that? Well, so there was an additional amount for COVID staffing that we paid a little bit more. It was not budgeted, so it's in there. Otherwise, that number would have been better. Gas. So how many of you get the gas company bill? A few of you. As residents of Atherton, some of you are on an older contract and you actually pay for your utilities. There's a lot of you that do not. We do what we call bundled services, and so you don't see the gas bill, but we see the gas bill. In the first quarter, it was 100% above budget. It was twice as much as what we budgeted. Aren't you thankful I didn't call and say, turn down your heat? Because it's getting very expensive. Now, it's better now, and we think over the course of the year, that'll even out itself. Electricity was $120,000, and it was 28% under budget. But we expect that every winter because we expect you to heat your houses or heat your units in the winter, and in the summer, you'll cool them. Gas is for heating, electricity is for cooling. Okay, so that's a part of that. You also use electricity because the days get longer and you don't turn on the lights as early, as long. So these numbers go down. So this is where it's supposed to be, but this one was much higher than what we expected. And we're hoping that this kind of evens out itself, or we're going to have to figure out something else. That's not good in terms of that. So anyway, any questions about those things? The budget. Have I thoroughly confused you? You're all okay. Some of you are going, yeah. Okay. So anyway, I just say, financially, Atherton's in a healthy place. It's in a good place. So there's another way to look at this, and I've tried to work with the board and you to understand this. So Atherton has what they call metrics, and it kind of gives us an idea of how we're doing versus other communities around the United States and how they're doing. It kind of gives us some baselines about what's good, where we're out of whack with other places, and what people say this is the way you ought to be. So the first one is what days cash on hand. And as you can see, when we started back in 2014, we had 158 days cash on hand. It's one way of looking at your savings account, okay? So it takes about, nowadays, it takes about $55,000 a day to run Atherton, okay? And so over the course of this last year, over the course of these last years, we've kind of raised that, and we wanted to do that because we wanted to have a healthier bottom line. We wanted to have a healthy savings account so that if there were bad rainy days, things like that, we would have the resources we need to take care of the problems we need to take care of. And you can see we've gotten very good. Last year, we dropped down a little bit. There were two reasons for that. One was because we still had money in the stock market when it went down, so the portfolio went down. And the second thing was we took $1 million out last year to build the duplex. Now, not all of those costs are done. But we spent $1 million last year building, investing back into the community. We're investing back in other ways, but that's part of what that was. And so between those two, it dropped down. In the first quarter, we still spent some money on the duplex, but things got better in the stock market. So as a result of that, we're in a healthy place. If you look at this 464, it's about where communities like ours that are rated, investment grade rated, what's called triple B, are rated. We're a little bit under. They're 500 and 527 a couple of years ago. They're a little under where we're at. I mean, they're a little over where we're at, but we're working as hard as we can to try and get there. And that's where we'd like to be. Cash to debt. This is how much money do we have in the bank to meet the indebtedness? If you owned $1 million on a mortgage for a house and you had $500,000 in the bank, you would have 50% of the cash to debt. If you had $1 million, if you owed $1 million and you had $1 million in the bank, you'd have 100% cash to debt. Okay? In this case, Atherton has about $25 million in debt from when we did the courtyard and refurbishing the campus and that big bond issue. But now we have over $26 million in the bank. So we're in a really healthy place there. Now, we're better than most communities that are triple B, and we like being where we're at. That doesn't mean we're going to take all that money and pay off everything, because then we wouldn't have any money in the bank. We don't like that position. We wouldn't have any debt, but we wouldn't have any money. And so we're going to stay right there, but we're in a healthy place. It's a good backstop for us. These are really what's called operational matrix, and they tell you how efficient your organization is, how well your revenues match your expenses. And in this case, net operating margin, which is used across a lot of industries. In our industry, triple B is 6.7 and 6.1. And Atherton's been there before. It dipped down in 2021, and then it came back up. And we're below that, but we're in a good space. As long as you're positive, that's better. That's better. The reason it dipped down here is because of COVID. In the December of 2020 and in January of 2021, Atherton had 17 people die of COVID in skilled nursing, and skilled nursing went down from 90 to 57. The same time we lost those precious people, we also lost revenue from that time. And that created a hole that we spent all year. At one point, this number was negative 6.7. And it took us all year to get back. Last year, we equalized, and so we're in a much healthier position. This is similar to that. It reflects that in a different kind of way. So the operating ratio is basically, the industry says 97 to 97.9, and Atherton's been right there. It jumped up here. Why? Expenses over revenue, because of that loss of revenue. We still had the same expenses. We still paid our people. We didn't pay as much overtime, but we still paid our people to come to work. We didn't want to lose them, but we still kept doing that. We had expenses, and so we had to pay those out even though we didn't have the revenue. It took us a while to recover, but we did. And so we're in a very healthy place again back here. We're thankful for that. Okay. This is called net operating margin adjusted. How many of you paid an entry fee to come to Atherton? Okay. So the question is, how do we account for that entry fee? Well, we account for it in one sense because it goes into the savings account. And so it raises the days cash on hand. It's the monthly fees that we calculate for what's called the net operating margin or the operating ratio. That's our efficiency. But how do we know that we're charging enough entry fees that will keep and sustain us in terms of that? That's what this looks at. And most communities like us with entry fees, it's about 22 to 23%. And this is, I've calculated that. So Atherton, you can kind of see, has been all over the map, hasn't it? It's been up, down, got way down here. Why? Revenues. We didn't get people in quite as quickly, and so it had a problem there. But then it came back up, and it's in a very healthy place right now. As long as we're over 20, we're in good shape. And actually, if you're an 18 or 19, you're in good shape. You don't want this number to be a negative. That's the thing you don't want. So we're in a healthy place. And then this tells you, are we spending enough to make the campus better? Capital expenditures as a percentage of depreciation. So Atherton depreciates assets at the rate of about $2 million a year. We've been doing that. We're an older campus. Things take, and so we're always fixing stuff. Some of you moved here, so we would fix your stuff. We try and really be good about fixing stuff, but we got a lot of stuff to keep fixing. Okay? And so as you can see, communities as a whole are fixing over 100% of depreciation. We're not spending quite $2.5 million of a year fixing stuff, but we're getting better. We were spending very little, and that was because we needed to put more cash in the bank because we were concerned that we didn't have enough reserve. But over time, we've tried to continue, and actually this year you're going to see this number go up because we built another building. And building another building always encourages us, causes us to invest. And so we're going to continue to do that. And so I would like to see us have 500 days cash on hand. And that one you saw, days cash on hand. And I'd like to see us spending 100%, $2.5 million investing in the community a year. That would be really good for Atherton. And if we were able to do that, we're working towards that. That's kind of our goal. All right. Did I thoroughly confuse you about those? Questions at all? Okay. As a whole, it's a healthy picture. It's a healthy picture, and it's a good place for Atherton to be. We feel good about that. Real quickly, this is census. This is just how many units are full. As you can see, we budgeted for 155 of Classic, there's 169 of those, and 47 of the Courtyard, there's 50 of those. At the end of the quarters, you can see here, we were 156 and 48, so we're above what we budgeted. We expect units to open up. People move to other levels of care. Some people pass. We understand that, so we don't budget right at 100% full. We do that. Then in assisted living, we budget, and companion care, we budgeted 30.5, and we were at 31. And in skilled nursing, we budgeted at 80, and we were at 85. You can kind of see that means that that's always for a healthy financial picture. Where we're at now, we're at 152, but we have 8 deposits on units. We expect by the first part of August that those 8 people will come in. I would expect there will be other units that open up. We have a couple of those that are actually we know about, but we still think we're in good shape there. In the Courtyard, we have 2 units available, and Brianna's working very quickly to kind of talk to people and see if they're interested in those units. We expect those to fill pretty quickly. And then in assisted living and companion care, we're at 32. So and we have a couple of those that are going to get filled. And in skilled nursing, we're filling those beds. So all of that predicts that as we move into this second quarter, our finances are going to be just as solid as they were through the first quarter, because we're going to meet all of our occupancy targets. And we feel good about that. Questions? Okay. Either I am so confusing, you're lost, or I am so clear, I'm brilliant. One of those two, and I'm not sure. All right. COVID. This is the last time that I'm going to give you a COVID report. It is not the last time I will talk about COVID.